Hello, I'm Bob Campbell with Alliance Solutions Group, and I'd like to share some insights on how to navigate the current crisis through sound leadership and decision-making principles. During our Crisis Leadership and Decision-Making course that we developed in partnership with FEMA and delivered to over 1,000 public safety and private sector crisis leaders, we share various perspectives on crisis decision-making. And one of the sources that we utilize in that course is a favorite book of mine by Jim Collins and Morton Hansen, a book called Great by Choice. In this book, Jim Collins and Morton Hansen conducted research on thousands of companies over a 30-year period and tried to identify how some companies not only succeeded but thrived through uncertain conditions, turbulence, and ambiguous environments. And out of their research come a case study in what he calls the 10Xers, those that outpace their competition 10 times over this period of 30 years. And they analyze what made these 10Xers different from their competition. Why did they succeed? And what were the key ingredients? And so he comes up with 4 key ingredients. And I'd like to share each of those 4 key ingredients with you and how that fits in the context of COVID-19 and the current crisis that we're navigating, and hope that you'll take something away and be able to apply some of the key nuggets of information out of this book and the course that we put together in partnership with FEMA. So the first is an idea called Fanatic Discipline. This is consistency in action. The 10Xers exhibited Fanatic Discipline. It's the true discipline that requires independence of mind to reject pressures to conform in ways incompatible with their values, performance standards, and long-term aspirations. They're capable of immense perseverance, as he states in the book. They're unyielding to their other standards, yet disciplined enough to not overreach. So they start with their values, their purpose, their long-term goals, and performance standards, and then they exercise fanatic discipline to adhere to them. Jim Collins gives several pictures and illustrations of this in his book. One is the 20-mile march, the idea that if you're going to walk across the United States, you might have a beautiful day and might be able to go more than 20 miles on a given day, but you hold back. You only go 20. But you have the discipline to at least do 20 every day. And that's the kind of discipline that he exhibits. He also gave the case study. One of their case companies is Southwest Airlines, and how Southwest Airlines had the discipline over this period of time to only go into one new market every year. Even though they might have had the opportunity and the cash and the economic ability to go into multiple new markets every year, they went with discipline, one every year. And after the 30-year period, they were one of the most profitable airlines and certainly outpaced their competition. So the idea here, and our takeaway for navigating COVID-19, is to stay focused on first your values. Those should be unyielding and never changing. The mission of your organization, the goals that you have. Don't deviate erratically in an attempt to gain some large advantage or get distracted with the roller coaster of news or restrictions that set you back, but rather navigate with fanatic discipline. Stay the course. The second attribute that he had for these 10Xers was something called empirical creativity. He defines this as not overlooking conventional wisdom to set course during times of uncertainty, and they didn't primarily look to other people, they didn't look to pundits or experts to see what they should do, but instead they primarily used empirical evidence of what was working and what was not working. This is going to be the key in recovery and reopening of America. We still want to follow the CDC guidelines, and the president has put out an approach for employers, but this all needs to be contextualized into your operations of your organization. What does that look like? It might be the need to set policies, establish procedures, conduct training on these new procedures and what's going on, and then hot wash it. Figure out what is working and what is not working, and then develop a plan to do some type of improvement. This is called empirical validation. This is the underlying principle under this attribute. So the authors say to be creative, but validate those creative ideas with empirical evidence and make sure that things are working the way that they're supposed to. You want to pay attention to what other businesses and organizations are learning through this, especially as they reopen. What are their lessons learned? What are their best practices? And are there any new technologies or other advances out there that might help you recover safely and securely during this time? The third area was productive paranoia. And this is the idea of having, I think he refers to it as a chief doomsday officer. Who's doing the what if scenarios? Who's anticipating what could go wrong? If anything could go wrong, it will go wrong. And so therefore you need to be planning for this. And so for those businesses that and organizations that have been doing this all along, you're probably doing all right through this crisis because you've been planning for this. But if you haven't been doing that, you still need to continue to do this throughout the crisis. And so be asking those questions, what else could go wrong? And being prepared for that and developing a plan. In the incident command system that is often used by public safety officials and responders, this is probably and should be occurring in the planning section of that incident command system. Be asking, what could go wrong and how do we develop a contingency plan around it? There are three areas of recommendations under productive paranoia. One is building cash reserves and buffers to prepare for unexpected events and bad luck before they happen. Now is the time to be doing that. If you have a good cash position, that is a good thing. Hold on to it. If you have access to lines of credit or loans or other sources of financial income, now would be the time to exercise those and fill your coffers with some cash to help you navigate the unproductive nature of the situation. The second is bounding risk. He describes 4 different types of risk. One is the death line risk, which is totally unacceptable risk that you do not and will not take because you risk further existence of your organization by taking that risk. Avoid the death line risk. And what he found is that when executives were making decisions, the 10Xers that succeeded over a 30-year period made fewer decisions that exposed them to these different types of risks, like death line risk. The second risk is asymmetric risk. This is the risk of there being a larger portion of a downside than to the upside potential of the decision. And so it's an unbalanced risk in the decision. So the 10Xers took fewer of these asymmetric risks. Then there's the uncontrollable risk. That's something that you have no control over, whether somebody perhaps gets infected and comes into your business and exposes you, that may be uncontrollable, other than the extent that you're shut down. And that needs to be managed as well. Looking out what are the uncontrollable risks, recognize them, and see if there's anything that you can do to mitigate those risks. The fourth risk that was identified was managing time-based risks. And this is the idea that you need to make timely decisions. If you make a decision too quickly, there could be an increase in risk. And if you wait too long, there could be an increase in risk. And if you fail to make a decision, that is a risk in and of itself. That is a decision. And so we need to manage those time-based risks. We need to know when our risk profile is changing and be able to make a decision and recognize that it's changing, make that decision before it changes so that you can affect the outcome from your organization. The third area under productive paranoia was zooming out, then zooming in, and remaining hypervigilant to a sense of changing conditions so that you can respond appropriately. And I think this takes on a different flavor right now. I mean, we all know what's going on around us with coronavirus and the risk, and then of course of unemployment and the economic impact. But there's also other types of things we need to be vigilant to, and if we get too focused on those, we miss out on the bigger picture. And so we need to be vigilant of the mental risk, the psychological risk that each of us are facing under stress. It could be underlying conditions that get worsened under stress, so anxiety, depression, addiction, unhealthy behaviors. In our course, we teach that under stress, decision makers tend to take riskier decisions, and that's just a tendency. And so we, as decision makers, leaders, need to understand how that works, and that we may be rushing to a decision because of the stress that we're under. And so it's important for us to measure that. So be vigilant, zoom out, see what's going on around you, look at the people, think about the organization, look at the context that we're operating in, the secondary and tertiary effects of what's happening. That's part of zooming out. So keep that in mind. I find it ironic that at one of the beginning chapters in his book, he quotes a play, and the quote is, "Most men die of their remedies and not of their illnesses." And I think that has some relevance to today's circumstances. So zoom out, pay attention to what's going on beyond just the COVID and unemployment situation, economic situation. He ties a lot of this together, these three different areas together, by talking about something he abbreviates SMAC. SMAC is an acronym for specific, methodical, and consistent. And in the book, he states that the signature of mediocrity is not an unwillingness to change, but the signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. Now, there's a delicate balance between changing, continuous improvement, making adjustments to your process, and staying very consistent. And obviously, we're being forced to make changes to how we do business right now. That presents risk to people's health and safety. It presents risk to the environment. It presents risk to your quality of your product or service that you're providing. And so we need to be aware of that as we adjust and make the changes that are necessary under these conditions. However, it's important that we stay specific, methodical, and consistent. The way to do that is to have written procedures and training for everyone in your organization, so that they need to know how to operate in this new normal. Otherwise, businesses may increase the risk of exposure and transmission of the disease, but they also have some other risks that need to be paid attention to, like the quality of their product and the risk to the environment. Finally, in Collins' book, Good to Great, it was a predecessor to this, he talks about the level 5 leader. And here he restates that the level 5 ambition was a key ingredient in the leadership of the organizations that succeeded over this 30-year period. And the level 5 leader is someone who is altruistic. They're effective in their leadership, but they're not so concerned about themselves. And that's where the level 5 ambition comes in. Level 5 ambition is thinking about a greater cause, a greater purpose for existence, whether it's building a great company, changing the world, or achieving something great that is ultimately not about the leader. And I think during a time like this, we need to be aware there are a lot of people trying to take advantage of others during this time, and cash in on short-term opportunities. And so I would advise to be wary of this and look for people with, if you're looking for advisors, look for people with proven background and expertise in these areas. If ASG can in any way help you navigate these times of turbulence and uncertainty, feel free to contact us. We're here to help you as an organization take the steps in reopening and recovering safely and successfully. This is something we've been doing for 15 years, planning for pandemics, writing emergency plans, doing health and safety analysis and audits. So we have the experience and the expertise to help you navigate these times. We are open, and we hope that you will be safe and healthy and reopen successfully.